The dropship's ram groaned as it lowered into the fog-choked ruins of Sector Thorn. Wind howled to fractured steel skeletons of old towers, carried with the stench of rust, ash, and something ancient, something that breathed. The pilot didn't even wait for her boots to hit the dirt before he pulled the craft back into the sky, engines screaming in retreat. She was alone. They meant her to be. Illyria Voss didn't flinch as the dust scattered across her visor. Her fingers stayed still, tight around the rifle slung across her chest, though she knew it would do nothing against what waited in this place. A gesture for protocol, not survival. She exhaled, watching the mist curl around her like it was testing her resolve. Above her, signs of the last expedition dangled like grotesque wind chimes. Shredded armor, scraps of human remains, fused metal from blast shields crumpled like paper. The ruins had consumed them all. Whole platoons sent in over the years, and not a single survivor. Only recordings, screams cut short, static over comms, blood-slick floors. They called it the grave circuit. The monster had no name, none that lived to tell it. And now they had sent her. Her boots crunched over debris as she moved through the fractured compound. Not a word spoken. No backup. No drone surveillance. Just a half-charged exosuit and a mission brief that said, "Terminate Subject X-57. Final clearance. Final attempt." She hadn't laughed, though the irony burned her lungs. She, who once led the Black Talon unit into sieges no one else would touch. She, who had pulled bleeding comrades from fire and stared down orbital bombardments without blinking, now exiled to a dead zone, a gift-wrapped corpse. It was punishment. Everyone knew it. No one said it aloud. Her refusal to fire on civilians during the Tarsus incident had cost her rank, comrades, and reputation. Mutiny, they whispered behind closed doors. Unfit for command. But they needed a face to save the brass. A scapegoat. Illyria gave them silence, and that terrified them more than any outburst ever could. She paused by a shattered barricade and crouched low, running a gloved hand through deep gouges in concrete. Something had torn this apart with claws longer than her forearm. Clean cuts, not rage, precision. She traced one slowly, her heartbeat steady. There were no signs of a firefight, no blast marks, just destruction, methodical and cold. As night fell, she made camp in the shell of an old relay tower. The structure groaned with the wind, metal grinding against itself like a warning. She cooked nothing. Smoke could bring it. She lit no beacon. Rescue wouldn't come. Instead, she pulled the mission data from her wrist pad, scanning the telemetry logs. The creature had been seen just once by drone, a blur between frames. It moved like shadow, faster than sound. Humanoid in shape, but not in motion. Joints bent wrong. Heat signatures off the charts. Every reading conflicted with the one before it. More myth than monster. She leaned against the wall, eyes closed. Let the silence press in. It didn't scare her. Not anymore. A sound. Low. Guttural. Like a growl born in the throat of the earth. She stood slowly, rifle unslung. Not raised. She would not provoke it. Not yet. Movement. 30 meters ahead, between the wreckage of an old train line. Something large shifted against the moonlight, barely visible in fog. She held her breath. Then it stepped forward. Her first thought was, wrong. Everything about its proportions, its gait, its posture, towering. Easily 9 feet tall, but crouched as if the sky offended it. Armor grown from bone, plates blackened and scarred from 100 fights. Eyes like twin furnaces, molten and unblinking. It did not charge. She did not run. They stared. 30 seconds. Maybe more. A lifetime. Illyria's pulse barely rose. She wanted to look at her, not just see her. wanted it to register something behind a helmet, something other than fear. She felt the rifle heavy in her hands and let it lower a few inches. Not surrender. Permission. It tilted its head. She took a step forward. The fog thickened, and in a heartbeat, it vanished. Not a sound. Not a trace. She didn't sleep that night. Morning came as a pale glow, filtered through the chemical haze above. She packed her gear in silence, marked the creature's location, and began her sweep. Not hunting, tracking, observing, learning. If they had sent her to kill it, then they had never understood what it was, or what she was. She found more signs of its passing. Trees twisted at the base, not broken, not careless. Paths cleared through rubble as though it avoided causing noise. Kill zones marked with burnt residue. Bones stacked, not scattered. Ritualistic. Every fiber of her training screamed that it was intelligent. She didn't report it. She couldn't. The comms were one way. They would only hear what they wanted. That she was delaying. That she'd cracked. That she was sympathizing. But Alara knew war. She had stared into men who enjoyed killing. This thing, whatever it was, didn't kill for pleasure. That evening, she returned to the tower and found a carcass laid at her feet. Fresh kill. Deer. Throat snapped cleanly, untouched otherwise. A gift or a challenge? She approached slowly, knelt, examined. The creature had left it there deliberately. No scavenger signs. No bite marks. As though it wanted her to know it could have killed her, but didn't. She didn't take the meat. But she left her canteen near the remains, half full. The next morning it was gone. All of it. This continued for days. Each night it came closer. Each day she followed. Patterns emerged. It circled her camp, left no tracks. Observe her when she slept, though she never heard it. A phantom in the fog, always watching. She started speaking aloud, not to it, but to the space around her. "You're not what they said," she murmured one evening, voice hoarse. "You're not a monster. You're a prisoner." No reply. But that night, it did not vanish when she saw it. It stood on the edge of the broken avenue, lit by the remnants of a collapsed neon sign. Glowing purple light danced across its armored skin, revealing more detail. Scars from weapons, branding marks on its forearms, cruel surgical seams. It had been made, not born, a weapon, just like her. She stepped forward, only one pace. It did the same. The next breath caught in her throat. For a heartbeat, they existed in the same space, not hunter and prey, not soldier and target, but beings who had been broken, used, and discarded by powers too high to bleed. Then, as before, it turned, but it did not vanish. It walked, slowly, deliberately, and she followed, not because she had to, because she chose to. They reached the edge of a ruined park, where a twisted playground sat beneath shattered glass domes. The beast sat at the base of a tree, still clinging to life, the only green for miles. She stayed standing. "Why didn't you kill me?" she asked, voice low. The answer came in silence, in shared breath, in the quiet knowing between two survivors of different wars. The monster raised its head. Their eyes locked again, and this time it blinked, a gesture so small yet profound. Trust, the first she'd been shown in years. Alara sat beside it, gun at her side, helmet off. For the first time in weeks, the wind felt warm. For the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. And somewhere in the shadows of the fallen city, something ancient watched them both and waited. Alara woke to silence, but not the kind born of emptiness, the kind shaped by breath held just beyond hearing. Her fingers tightened around the rifle before her eyes even opened. She did not move. Not yet. The rhythm of her heartbeat stayed steady, measured, waiting. She opened her eyes slowly. The creature was there, crouched just beyond the dying firelight, closer than it had ever been. Less shadow now, more shape, arms like coiled steel cables, shoulders broad enough to crush stone, but still and watchful, its head tilted, studying her. Alara didn't reach for her helmet. She kept her voice low. "You've been following me longer than I thought." A slight twitch, not confirmation, not denial. It could understand her, of that she was now certain, but it chose not to speak. Or perhaps it couldn't. "I'm not here to finish a mission," she said, rising slowly to a sitting position. "That's what they wanted, but I'm done doing their killing." It stood as she did, unfolding to full height, eclipsing the broken skyline behind it. The eyes still burned like molten iron, but something in their glow had shifted, less predatory, more wary. "You know they'll send more, right?" she said. "They'll keep sending soldiers until one doesn't care what you are, until one doesn't stop when you blink." It took a single step forward, slow and deliberate. Alara didn't flinch. The wind shifted between them, brushing the loose strands of her hair like cold fingers. "I don't think you want to keep fighting," she said. "But if you do, I need to know why." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It pulsed. Breathing, thinking. The creature turned its head slightly, then pointed toward the eastern skyline, toward the facility buried beneath the ruins, the black tower half swallowed by the earth. Alara followed its gesture with her eyes. She had seen that place on her scans. A power relay station, long dormant, sealed during the collapse of the war. No life signs, no data, but the creature's attention lingered there like it remembered. "Is that where they made you?" It didn't answer, but its hands clenched, sharp talons curling inwards until they scraped bone. Pain, memory, rage. She understood. "Then that's where we go." It turned and moved without another sound, each step silent on the broken terrain. She followed, her gear light, rifle slung behind her. No more illusions of a firefight. She wasn't here to kill anymore. She was here to witness. As they moved through the city's remains, Alara noted the patterns. Places a creature had passed before, untouched zones where it avoided combat. It didn't destroy for pleasure. It walked carefully around children's skeletons. Untouched by time, it had spared civilians. Unlike the humans who first stormed the zone, they passed remnants of old combat. Twisted armor, shattered drones, vehicles ripped open like eggshells. But the bodies told a different story. Soldiers left untouched. Gear intact. No looting. No desecration. Not a monster. A warning. The black tower emerged from the earth like a wound, shaped like a needle driven into the soil. Glass facades cracked but intact. High-voltage pylons surrounded it, long dead, strangled in vines. The reinforced front gates still bore human insignia. Faded now. GenCorps Military Research Division. Classified, Alara muttered. "That explains why they never gave me full mission specs." The creature approached the main gate. Without hesitation, it reached out, its clawed hand slamming into the access panel. Sparks flared, circuits screamed, and the door shuddered open with a groan that echoed for miles. No alarms, no resistance. They stepped inside together. The air was still and cold, preserved by power reserves that hummed far beneath their feet. Long corridors stretched into shadow, lined with shattered windows and peeling propaganda posters. She glanced at one. "We build peace through strength." Underneath, a line scrawled in blood decades old. "We buried peace to make weapons." The deeper they moved, the more grotesque the facility became. Surgical rooms, observation cells, thick walls scarred from the inside, claw marks, burn marks, bullet holes. Containment had failed here once, long ago, and the cost had been steep. They reached the central chamber. Ilara stopped. This was no lab. It was a tomb. Hundreds of glass pods stood arranged in rows, each one dark and lifeless. Inside them, creatures like the one beside her, some smaller, some larger, all different configurations. Chimeras of science and war, twisted limbs, burned-out eyes, scars from tests no ethical mind would imagine. She turned to him. You weren't the only one. He stood still, a statue in grief. Her gaze shifted. A console at the center of the room blinked faintly, an interface still operational. She approached and activated it. A flicker, then a grainy projection. A man in uniform appeared. Gencor insignia. Dead eyes. Subject X. 57 remains the only stable prototype. Aggression suppressed through visual stimuli. Intelligence exceeding projections. Emotion unpredictable. Termination protocols failed. Containment breached. Facility sealed. The log cut. No apology. No regret. Just data. Ilara looked at the creature again. You were never the danger, she said softly. You were the warning. He walked among the pods, one slow step at a time, stopping at each one. Some he touched gently. Others he lowered his head to. A ritual, a memory. He had names for them, not spoken, not written, but real. And now only he remained. Ilara stood in the center of the room, surrounded by a silent graveyard of weaponized life. Her fingers curled. Rage burned low beneath her skin. They sent her here to kill him, to erase the last witness to their crime. She pulled her rifle from her back and dropped it. The creature turned sharply. She raised both hands, palms open. I won't finish what they started. It didn't move, but its shoulders relaxed. Then it stepped forward and reached toward her, not with claws, but with open fingers. Hesitant, as though unsure if the gesture would be returned. She met it halfway. No fear, just understanding. Metal met glove. Not enemies. Not anymore. But a low hum began to rise beneath the floor, deep, mechanical, rhythmic. Ilara's eyes widened. Backup power. Something waking. The console blinked again, but this time a different voice filled the room. Cold. Automated. Command protocol override accepted. Final purge in progress. Initiating facility sterilization in T-minus 15 minutes. Her stomach dropped. They had left a failsafe. One last cover-up. In case someone like her got too close to the truth. The creature looked to her, then to the pods. He couldn't leave them. She stepped forward. There's no one left to save. But his eyes didn't shift. He stood firm. No, she whispered. You'd rather die with them than let them be forgotten. She turned back to the console, fingers racing over the archaic interface, trying override codes, emergency shutdowns. Nothing worked. Then she paused. An emergency comm beacon. She activated it. A signal burst into the sky, not to call for help, but to broadcast everything. The logs, the facility records, the video footage, the graveyard, the crimes. All of it. The truth would escape, even if they didn't. She looked back to the creature. He was standing at the center of the pod chamber, arms crossed over his chest. Like a sentry, she stepped beside him. There's no way out, she said. The creature turned, then pointed. Up, a shaft, narrow, sealed, but climbable. He wanted her to go. She shook her head. I'm not leaving you behind. But he took her wrist. Firm, not cruel. Then placed something in her hand. A small black shard. Smooth. Heavy. From his armor. A piece of himself. He stepped back. She swallowed hard. I'll make sure they remember. He gave a low rumble. Almost a growl. But not anger. Farewell. She ran. As the chamber began to glow red and klaxon screamed, Elara climbed to the narrow shaft, teeth clenched, muscles burning. The structure shook. Fire bloomed below. She didn't look back. When she emerged into the light, the tower behind her collapsed in silence, and the world above finally began to listen. Elara descended the hill alone, boots scuffing loose gravel, the tower's ruins smoldering behind her. The beacon signal still pulsed from the transmitter she carried, an uninterrupted stream of damning data, now screaming across every orbital relay within range. She didn't need to guess how long it would take before someone noticed. She only had to wait. The desert air shimmered with heat, the wind dry against her skin. Every step forward echoed with a weight heavier than silence. She had made a choice, not the one her command would have preferred, but the only one that allowed her to look in a mirror without flinching. She'd spared the last of Gencor's sins, or buried him if he hadn't survived. But Elara wasn't naive. A message, even one wrapped in truth, did not guarantee change. It only meant war would come wearing a different face. She made camp under the skeletal remains of a crashed gunship, the chassis scorched but intact enough to provide shade. Her fingers worked in habit, filtering water, prepping rations, scanning channels. Static on most bands. Then a crackle. Priority 1 response. Investigative strike team inbound. Confirmed orbital signature of illegal AI biotech experimentation. Extraction of all witnesses authorized. Lethal force permitted. Elara stared at the receiver. Cold surged through her veins, eclipsing the heat. That hadn't taken long. They'd heard the signal. All right, but not to seek justice. They were coming to silence it. She was no longer a soldier on assignment. She was a target with a time limit. Figures, she muttered. Her rifle was gone, left behind in a gesture of peace she'd thought final. Now, survival meant preparing differently. She still had her toolkit, a knife, 2 grenades, and what little tech she'd salvaged from the wreckage. But the greatest advantage she had was knowledge of the terrain, the ruins, the forgotten death traps beneath the sand. And she wasn't alone in knowing them. As night fell, the sky above filled with silent predators. Sleek black ships slid through the atmosphere like cuts in the stars. No insignia, no broadcasts, just a quiet procession of death with engines cold and intentions colder. Elara moved like a ghost between the ruins. She watched their landing from the shadows. 4 dropships, each deploying a squad. Clean armor, black visors, no chatter, no hesitation. They weren't just soldiers. They were erasers. Set not to question, but to erase. Her fingers clenched around the black shard the creature had given her. She had kept it looped into a chain around her neck, a symbol of what she'd witnessed, of who she'd spared. The squads fanned out in perfect formation. Tactical, efficient, thorough. She knew their protocol. First, sweep for survivors. Then secure evidence. Then destroy it. They didn't know she was watching. Not yet, but she had no illusions. That wouldn't last. She slipped inside the shattered husk of a museum once dedicated to peacekeeping history. Now it was bones and broken glass. She crouched near a fractured display. What once held a soldier's exosuit now housed a nest of scorpions. She scanned the map etched into the floor. City grid, emergency tunnels, hidden conduits beneath the surface. A route curved beneath the Black Tower's crater. Dangerous, unstable, but the only way to intercept what they were really after. The main transmitter core. She moved through sewers that reeked of rust and time. She crawled. Rats scattered from her path. Water pooled ankle deep. Her breathing slowed. Every step mattered. Every sound could be betrayal. She emerged in the catacombs beneath the transmitter bunker, barely 50 meters from the relay tower substructure. The hum of high-grade portable reactors vibrated through the wall. Proof the eraser squads were already interfacing with the relay, trying to cut the signal. Too late. She smiled grimly. The message had already spread to over 100 satellites. Archive copies. Encrypted redundancies. Even if they destroyed the hardware, they couldn't delete it all. But they'd try. A sharp footstep echoed above. Then another. Someone else was here. Ilera slid her back against the wall, knife drawn. Shadows passed on the catwalk above. 3 operatives. Different formation. Less uniform. One move ahead, silent. Another scanned methodically. The third paused, then looked straight down. Ilera didn't breathe. They dropped. She rolled, momentum taking her out of the arc of the first strike. A baton hissed past her skull, crackling with electrical charge. She caught a glimpse, no insignia, just matte black armor. No words. They weren't here for negotiation. The second operative descended, cutting off her retreat. The third raised a compact submachine gun. Ilera moved. She kicked the first attacker's knee backward, caught the baton mid-fall, and drove it into the second's throat. The third fired. Sparks erupted as the shot clipped her shoulder, but not enough to drop her. She threw the baton like a spear. It struck the submachine gun, jamming the bolt. Then she closed the distance, knife sweeping low. 2 were down. The third choked and twitched on the ground. She stood over him, chest heaving, blood seeping into her sleeve. "You don't know what you're protecting," she said. "Do you?" But he wasn't listening. Already dead. Above her, more boots thundered. Too many. She ran, not toward escape, but toward the central chamber, where the last of the tower's core system still flickered. They wanted the heart of the signal purged, and that was where she'd make her stand. She climbed the final stairwell just as another operative turned the corner. She ducked his shot and tackled him hard. They fell together, rolling. He tried to choke her. She bit his arm and drove her knife between the plates in his armor. The smell of blood hit her like rust and regret. She kicked him off and kept going. The relay room yawned open, an octagonal vault of cables and holoscreens, a pulsing beacon core at its center. 3 operatives were already inside, configuring a destruction charge. She reached into her vest and pulled the 2 grenades. "Sorry, boys," she whispered. She rolled them across the floor. The blast staggered the room. 1 operative was thrown against the wall. Another hurled through a console. The third tried to aim, but Ilera hit him with a broken chair leg and finished it with a punch. She dropped beside the core. Blood dripped from her chin. Her breath was ragged. It was almost done. Then the door slammed open. She turned, already too slow. The commander entered. No armor, no insignia, just a black uniform and eyes like winter glass. "I should have known it would be you," he said. "Wasn't expecting a reunion," Ilera replied, hand twitching toward her sidearm. He raised a palm, not in peace, but in delay. "You always were the most inconvenient of us." She stood slowly. "You knew what they were doing. You signed the orders." "I drafted the protocols," he said. "That was worse." She shook her head. "Why?" He looked around the ruined room, the core still glowing. "Because monsters make excellent weapons, until they start thinking. You met him, didn't you?" She didn't speak. He stepped forward. "You understand now why it's necessary, why we burn the evidence, not just to cover it, but to stop it from spreading." She let the silence stretch. Then she threw the black shard at his feet. His eyes widened. "You let it live?" "No," she said. "He let me live." The commander's jaw tightened. "Then this planet burns." He raised the detonator. She fired. The shot hit his wrist, sending the device spinning. It hit the floor with a crack. The countdown began anyway. She dove past him, slammed a fist into the emergency override. Too slow. 10 seconds of purge. The commander lunged at her, teeth bared. They fought in silence. He landed 2 hard blows. She struck him once in the throat. He gasped. She grabbed a detonator and flung it into the relay core. The explosion was instantaneous. When the light faded, only one figure stood amid the ruin. Burnt, bleeding, but alive. Ilera limped from the chamber, the signal still burning in the sky, untouched. Her face was ash-smeared, her eyes distant. But she walked, because the truth was out there now, and someone had to be alive to answer when the world finally asked why. The wind over the black sands carried ash and silence. Smoke rose in columns in the cratered ruins of the relay tower, staining the sky with a smear of gray that reached far beyond the horizon. The message had gone out. The command team was dead. The erasers scattered, hunted or buried beneath fractured stone and twisted steel. And yet Ilera remained, a silhouette against the smoldering remnants of everything that had tried to silence her. She moved slowly now, every limb resisting motion. Pain lived in her ribs, her side, her leg, each step a negotiation. Her body ached like it remembered every blow, every burn, but her mind was sharper than it had ever been. The mission had changed. She was no longer trying to survive. She was trying to make the truth impossible to bury. The black shard still hung from her neck. Scorched but whole, it had stopped pulsing hours ago. Whatever link it had to the creature she'd spared, who had once been human, and now was something far more, was dormant, or severed. She couldn't be sure, but it didn't feel dead, just quiet. She approached the edge of the plateau where the desert began again, endless and unyielding. There, she saw the figure waiting, tall, cloaked in irregular armor fused with something organic. At first, it didn't move, not until she came within 20 feet. "I wasn't sure you'd come back," she said, voice hoarse. The creature turned. Not a monster, not a weapon, not anymore. "What you did," it said, its voice still layered with mechanical echo and low human tone. It reached them. Ilera narrowed her gaze. "Them, others like me," it replied, scattered, buried, sleeping in facilities across systems. Your signal woke something old. A tremor passed through her, not fear, not exactly, but awe. "How many?" she asked. "I don't know. I feel them stirring. In machines. In dark vaults where no one speaks." She stepped closer, watching it with careful eyes. "You're not here to hurt anyone, are you?" "If I were, I wouldn't be speaking." She nodded, accepting the truth of it. The creature, once a man long ago, could have killed her 12 times. But it hadn't. It had chosen something else. "Why me?" she asked finally. "Why let me live?" It studied her, the face beneath its mask impossible to read. "Because you listened, because you made a choice no one else did. You saw what they did to me, and you didn't look away." A bitter laugh escaped her throat. "I was trained not to feel anything, to follow the objective. That programming broke somewhere along the line." "Then you're lucky," it said. "Most break and never come back." She lowered herself onto a nearby rock, every joint protesting. The creature didn't sit. It stood like a sentinel, posture still and unnatural. But there was a presence to it now, less of a weapon, more of a will. The message, it's spreading. I can't stop them from spinning it, but I've scattered enough copies to force accountability. The creature's voice darkened. "They'll come for you." "They already did," she said, tapping the scar on her arm. "Next time, I won't be running. You'll be hunted, not just by them, by everyone who can't afford for your story to be true." She met its gaze, unwavering. "Then I make them afraid of what happens if they don't listen." The creature stepped forward and held out a small device, roughly forged, half organic, half metal. This is a key to one of the vaults. It may have survivors, or something worse. Ilera took it carefully, feeling its subtle heat. Why give this to me? Because I can't go where you can, it replied. You still walk among them. You can tell the story in ways I never could. I've become a myth. You're still real. She didn't feel real. Not after what she'd done. Not after the lives she'd taken. But if the price of truth was that kind of weight, she would bear it. Someone had to. In the distance, low thunder cracked across the plains. Not a storm. Dropships. More were coming. Ilera stood. We don't have much time. I'll draw them away, the creature said. Give you distance. No, she said sharply. We go together. It hesitated. That's not wise. She stepped toward it, a hand on the device hanging at her hip. They won't expect us to fight as one. You trust me? It asked. Enough to risk dying beside you. The creature turned, facing the horizon. Then we make them remember what they tried to forget. Together they moved. Ilera on foot, scanning the landscape, the creature at her side like a living shadow. No words were spoken, none needed. The ground before them led into broken cityscapes, half swallowed by the desert, the kind of places where evidence went to die. But now those places might hold answers. They reached an overlook as night fell, watching the convoy below, military, corporate, unified in their desire to erase. 15 transports, combat ready, shields up, weapons glowing. Think we can make a dent? She asked. No, it said, but they don't need to die. Just fail. She looked at it, surprised. There was a time, it added, when I believed destruction was the only way forward, that if they feared us, they'd stop. But now I see they fear too much already. Fear only teaches them to strike first. We need something more. Hope? She asked, voice flat. Truth. She drew a breath. Then let's show them what it looks like. They struck just after midnight. Not with fire, not with death, but with disruption. Ilera slipped through blind spots, hacking into comms, replacing coordinates, rerouting commands. The creature sowed chaos with its presence alone, jamming sensors, warping electromagnetic fields, bending shadows. By dawn, the convoy hadn't lost a single life, but they had lost control. Orders conflicted. Systems crashed. 2 transports simply vanished, routed to distant safe zones by false coordinates. No shots fired. No blood spilled. Just confusion. In the end, the only thing left behind was a signal, repeating on every emergency frequency. What we buried is awake. What we feared is here. Not to destroy, but to remind us what we forgot. Mercy, memory, humanity. By the time reinforcements arrived, Ilera and the creature were gone. She stood now at the edge of a shattered city called Virilia, one a thriving hub before the experiments began. Beneath it, she knew, was one of the vaults. She could feel it calling. The device pulsed in her hand, guiding her down. She glanced back one last time. The creature stood half-shrouded in smoke, watching. I'll go first, she said. I'll be close. Then she descended. The steps were carved stone, metal bones beneath old concrete. Dust choked the air. But the farther she went, the more the silence changed. It grew warmer, softer, like a breath held too long, now exhaled. The vault door stood before her, round, sealed, humming faintly. She pressed the device into its core. Lights flickered. Mechanisms shifted. The door opened. Inside were stasis pods. Dozens, maybe more. Some were empty. Others flickered with failing lights. But in at least 6, figures stirred. Humanoid, but altered, not grotesque. Not monstrous, just different, like the creature she had freed. Their eyes opened, one by one, and none of them screamed. She stepped forward. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said. One figure, a woman with hair like silver thread and circuitry laced through her skin, tilted her head. "You came." "I'm here to tell your story," Ilara said. "If you'll let me." The woman nodded once. Behind Ilara, the creature entered. The silver-haired woman stared at him, and something passed between them. Recognition, sorrow, understanding. Then she turned to Ilara again. "Begin." And so she did.